We'd like to welcome everyone tonight to our Building Bridges, the Roles, Religion, and Religious Freedom play in building harmony in our communities. This event has been co-sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the J. Reuben Clark Law Society. Elder David A. Wright, Area 70 for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is presiding at this meeting, and he has asked me, Ann Mettler, to I am the North America West Regional Chair for the J. Reuben Clark Law Society, and he has asked me to conduct this evening. We are honored to have friends and neighbors here from many faith traditions to share in this event tonight. And we welcome you. We are grateful for your support and participation in tonight's meeting. Our hope is that this evening we can explore the social benefits that come from religious coexistence, tolerance, and practical respect, to remember that all human beings deserve to be treated with respect, love, and dignity. And finally, we hope we will all look for opportunities in our own spheres and communities to build bridges of respect, support, and community among all faiths. We will begin this evening with an opening prayer given by Elder Tawana E. Hennessy of the Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Okay.
Tell them.
Okay.
That's right.
All right, we're going to try this again. Because I felt like the only people that responded were those that are up here with me. But I need to know that you all out there are with me, right? So we're going to try this just one more time, and I know that we can do it. I just know. I have so much trust and so much faith in each and every one of you that I know that when I say good evening, everyone, that I'm just going to hear this loud good evening back. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. See? Faith works. I'm Elder Tawana Hennessy. I'm from Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church, and this is not my first time being with you all, and it's a delight to be with you here tonight. So my task is to give the opening prayer, and so I guess I will do that since you all gave me that hearty good evening. I'm going to ask you just to join with me, just close your eyes, and as we enter into prayer. Almighty God, we come to you this evening just thanking you for this opportunity that we have to come together. As I think about building bridges, I pray that we each open ourselves up, that we extend our hands and our hearts and our feet to do the work of building bridges, recognizing that there are several different denominations within this room tonight. However, what we know is that we are more alike than we are different because we are created in your image. So I pray that we come to this with open hearts, with open minds, ready to receive, ready to hear, and ready to always put to action your love. And I believe that's what this entire night is about your love. And so we just pray that you have your way in this place and that we leave here better than we came. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. I heard the audience.
Thank you. I hope all of you have received a program, and we will just follow down in line with what the program tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Amy Lynn Andrus. She is the Associate Director for the Brigham Young University International Center for Law and Religion. The mission of the center is to help secure the blessings of freedom of religion and belief for all people. Supporting this mission in her capacity at the center, Amy organizes conferences, edits publications, and mentors international law students. In addition, Amy helps run the center's summer program in Oxford, the Young Scholars Fellowship in Religion and the Rule of Law. Amy, I'll turn the time over to you.
Thank you so much. The Portland area is one of my family's favorite places in the world. And so it's wonderful to be invited to be here with you this evening. I'm going to just do a little technical maneuvering here and hope it works. It worked earlier today, and of course it never works on the second try. So we need some IT people here nearby to help. Does this need to be turned on? Okay. It's really humbling to be on this program with these distinguished panelists. I'm really thrilled to hear what they have to say this evening. So our theme this evening deals with bridges. And bridges, by definition, cross divides. And they've featured prominently in the news recently from various corners of the world. You may have seen online footage from the recent opening ceremony of a new footbridge in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A split second after the dignitaries cut the ribbon opening the bridge collapsed, sending the dignitaries sprawling to the ground, much to the delight of the onlookers nearby. And happily, the only injury here seemed to be to everyone's pride. But 1 week later, in Morbi, India, a footbridge failed with much more serious consequences. Some 200 people were gathered on the supposedly recently repaired 19th century bridge to celebrate a holiday when it collapsed, killing at least 135 people. Earlier in October, the Crimean bridge connecting the Crimean Peninsula to Russia was heavily damaged by an explosion. The cause of that explosion and which side of the conflict was responsible is still being debated, but it severely disrupted Russia's supply chain to its troops in southern Ukraine. There's another type of bridge that periodically makes the news for very different reasons. These awe-inspiring living root bridges, found mostly in northeast India, result from a combination of natural and human forces. Sometimes they're double-decker, like the ones you see here, but these bridges are not so much constructed as they are grown. Over time, the aerial roots of the rubber fig tree are trained by community members to grow and entwine together, sometimes around a bamboo framework, creating a strong mesh-like structure or network. The bridges are grown in densely forested areas where they have steep slopes and receive upwards of 42 feet of rain a year. That's 42 feet. Even Portland can't beat that. And in that environment, these are the only structures that people can build to facilitate connections for trade, transport, communication, medical, and other care. It takes a few decades for a living bridge to be considered complete, but it can support travelers earlier than that. So at first, a few dozen people can cross in the earlier stages of a bridge, but when it nears completion, more than 50 people a day can cross at a time. These bridges don't require money, just time, dedication, and cooperation. And if maintained by the community, and if the donor trees are kept healthy, the bridges can last for hundreds of years. In fact, unlike man-made bridges, living bridges actually grow stronger with time if maintained. They even become their own ecosystems, growing and supporting other flora and fauna. If not maintained, they can grow wild and unusable, or they die off. According to UNESCO, these, quote, structural ecosystems have performed in extreme climatic conditions for centuries, validating the resilience of an ancient culture where collective cooperation and reciprocity were the fundamental building blocks of life. The intergenerational growth process of nurturing a sapling into a robust load-bearing structure in extreme climate and geography reveals the exceptional enterprise and skill, suggesting a masterpiece of human creative genius, unquote. Often when we think of bridge building, we think of concrete and pillars and girders and big, huge engineered structures. But I propose that the work of building bridges to build harmony and peace in our communities is less about engineering codes and more about planting seeds and entwining roots. I've never been to Northeast India, but its extreme climate and geography seem a fitting comparison to the extreme cultural climate and jagged cultural geography of our communities today. Our current environment similarly requires robust, load-bearing living bridges to span our seemingly huge divides. And tonight, I'll share just some overarching principles about how religion and freedom of religion or belief can sow seeds and train those roots to create living bridges in our spheres of influence. Then I'm really eager to hear what the panelists have to say about how some of those principles might be carried out in their own communities, how they may have seen them work. I hope that we can all come away tonight edified and with some principles and practices that will be helpful for us to use in our own spheres of influence. First off, we can draw on roots of human dignity. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was drafted and adopted without dissent by the United Nations General Council in 1948 in the aftermath of World War II, when atrocities against Jews and other minority populations had come to light. It is the foundational document for all other international and regional human rights instruments and for human rights provisions in the 90% of national constitutions written after World War II. In its preamble, the Declaration recognizes the inherent dignity and equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family as the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. And similarly, in Article 1, it states all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights and should act toward one another in the spirit of brotherhood. Article 18 contains the provision recognizing the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. In 2018, to mark the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration's passage, our center began an initiative in promoting human dignity as the foundation and goal of human rights. This Human Dignity Initiative has resulted in conferences, publications, and the 2018 Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone, Everywhere. Government leaders and others around the world often see human rights as a Western construct. They see it something as foreign and imposed from without. Or they may see human rights in isolation without understanding the reciprocal duties that are inherent in human rights as outlined in the Declaration. But since undertaking this initiative, we've seen real climate change in the work of promoting freedom of religion or belief around the world. The concept of honoring human dignity rather than human rights is familiar to all cultures, and discussions of how to honor it can lead to an increased recognition of the freedom to believe and act on those beliefs. We've found that the concept of human dignity is a useful tool, a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, teaching us how to interact with others generally and advocate for freedom of religion or belief specifically. Focusing on the inherent dignity in those with whom we interact means that we really listen, try to understand and show concern for others' perspective, speak with courtesy and respect, collaborate to find solutions that acknowledge others' dignity, find win-win situations wherever possible, solutions wherever possible, and establish relationships of trust. Second, in relation to this human dignity focus, to grow living bridges, people of faith must encourage roots of moderation and unity. President Dallin H. Oaks, a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has urged Latter-day Saints specifically to moderate and unify when it comes to contested issues. But that's something that people of goodwill everywhere, of all faiths, can take as our charge. At our center's Religious Freedom Annual Review last summer, Judge Thomas Griffith, now retired from the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, discussed this counsel to moderate and unify in the context of the Founding Fathers and upholding the Constitution. He said, and excuse this long quote, but I didn't want to paraphrase Judge Griffith's really eloquent words. He said, "The key insight that we get from the history of the Constitution comes from the summer of 1787 itself, in the way the Founding Fathers crafted the Constitution. They were on the verge of dissolution. It just wasn't going to work. The differences were too great. And yet 6 weeks later, they had succeeded. In transmitting the Constitution to Congress, George Washington wrote that the Constitution was the result of the spirit of amity and mutual deference, which the peculiarity of our circumstances rendered indispensable. You want to support and defend the Constitution? Learn its provisions and approach contentious issues with the spirit of amity and deference." To me, the key insight as to what happened in the summer of 1787, what I would say is the miraculous element of that event is when the Constitution was on the verge of dissolution, 11 moderates got together and decided they were not going to let the convention fail. And so they did something remarkable. They convinced their fellow delegates to enter into a compromise for the sake of unity before they knew the terms of the compromise. I believe that is what President Oaks is talking about when he says that we should work to moderate and unify. You want to support and defend the Constitution of the United States? Then get off your cable channels. Stop repeating talking points that are prepared by partisans and look to build the spirit of amity and mutual deference in your community, unquote. Third, and relatedly, we can grow living bridges by supporting laws, policies, and programs that promote fairness for all. In a 2021 talk at the University of Virginia, President Oaks discussed the benefits of collaborative law and policymaking as a way to resolve differences without compromising core values. This approach differs starkly from the winner-take-all approach in most contests over seemingly competing human rights. President Oaks stated that in most cases, collaborative law and policymaking is preferable to judicial decisions, which tend to declare winners and losers. They are limited to the scope of the case before them, and they don't allow for the really complex and comprehensive policymaking that's required in seeming conflicts like those between LGBTQ+ and non-discrimination interests and religious liberty interests. So President Oaks states there are worthy constitutional and ethical arguments on both sides of such issues, and so far as possible, we should seek to accommodate them consistent with the most important interests of all sides. He points to the Utah Compromise of 2015 as a model of the kind of legislation we should support. That legislative collaboration is still held up by national thought leaders and publications as a remarkable achievement. It was an effort that brought together organizations and individuals from both the religious and LGBTQ+ communities in Utah, communities that aren't mutually exclusive, although we speak of them as if they were, to draft and pass 2 bills in the Utah State Legislature that protected fundamental rights for both groups. In fact, participants from both sides of the process agree that the bill's popular name, the Utah Compromise, is a misnomer because while the 2 sides collaborated on a legislative solution, neither felt that they compromised any deep-seated values. The Fairness for All approach has been successful at even more local levels as well. At our center's Summer Religious Freedom Annual Review, a woman named Alice Parkin spoke about a Utah Compromise-like coalition that she helped create in her school district in Virginia, where issues surrounding transgender students were heatedly debated. Concerned about the contention and the tone surrounding the issue, Alice helped gather a coalition from both sides. The key being that the coalition was made up of individuals who held strong opinions, but were also willing to listen to those on the other side and collaborate. The process employed a human dignity-centered approach, building trust, recognizing common interests, really listening, trying to understand the other's perspectives, using that Swiss Army knife of human dignity, working together in good faith. And in the end, they were able to come up with a win-win solution, a new policy on student bathroom and locker room use that was agreeable to all. Perhaps the most obvious way that we can grow living bridges is to intertwine, to grow our relationships with each other. The Latin origin of religion, religare, literally means to bind together. And ideally, belief systems not only bind like-minded believers together, but bind believers to others of other beliefs or other faiths as well. The founding director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies at BYU, Cole Durham, is in essence the Johnny Appleseed of the field of law and religion, and is a hero of mine and of countless others. In the early 1990s, with the dissolution of the Soviet bloc, he was asked to help draft legislation in those post-Soviet countries that would offer more robust protections for freedom of religion or belief. Cole thought this would be a short-term project, just a couple of years, but his work in law reform, training, educating, and building networks continued. He's helped draft constitutions in Iraq, Thailand, and Nepal, and has consulted on religion-related laws all over the world. In 2000, he founded our center at BYU to facilitate that work, and he's still unstoppable, though he's technically retired. I think in this last week, he was in meetings in Indonesia and in the United Arab Emirates, speaking about freedom of religion there. This past week, a colleague of mine and I were in Vietnam, actually conducting training with government and other officials in Vietnam. And we were only able to do that because of Cole's groundbreaking work in that country over several decades. I arrived in Portland last night after traveling for 30 hours, which explains the bags under my eyes and my very swollen ankles. But the doors have been open to religious freedom in nations like Vietnam that had previously had severe restrictions on religious freedom because of Cole Durham. So how has Cole done it? He's brilliant and knows the field like no one else, but he himself would admit that he's the poster boy for absent-minded professors. He's soft-spoken, he's not a terribly dynamic speaker, but when he speaks, people listen, including people in power, and he's revered and spoken of in hushed tones by government, academic, religious, and civil society leaders around the world. And that is because, this is the key, he prioritizes his relationships. He always focuses on human dignity and moderates and unifies to strengthen relationships between faith groups and individuals and the governments and the world. As a result, he's developed this network of allies around the world that's been highly influential in protecting and promoting religious freedom. He knows it's important to contribute to law reform and educate and train, but in the end, the most important work is planting seeds and training roots to interconnect and create those living bridges between people. In addition to moderating and unifying, you can grow relationships by being curious about others' beliefs, asking questions and listening, helping make wherever you are, including your workplace, a safe place to share beliefs. I would warn that you may want to proceed with caution, depending on your work environment, but maybe not with as much caution as you might think. Trying to develop true relationships and friendships with people of other beliefs or non-faiths to avoid that echo chamber effect. After graduating from law school at the age of 52, I got a clerkship with the U.S. Department of Justice in the Seattle Immigration Court. My two fellow clerks and I shared an office about the size of a broom closet, and we came from very different backgrounds. They were about the age of my children, and we seemed on the surface to have very little in common. One was Jewish from New York City and was active with her partner in her synagogue. I was a Latter-day Saint from Utah. The other clerk was culturally Catholic from Pittsburgh and was now agnostic, but was very curious about religion as a cultural construct. We would have almost daily conversations about religion, the holidays that we were observing, the origins of our family's faith, our religion-based dietary and lifestyle choices, our faith's histories, what meetings we attended over the weekend. One of our judges grew up in a Christian church that he no longer affiliated with. He was now in a same-sex marriage, and he was also very open about his beliefs or lack thereof. But we really just enjoyed each other's company and thoughts. We didn't all live the same lifestyle, but that didn't really matter. We did agree on a surprising number of issues, including extending mercy to the people who came before the immigration court to the extent that the law would allow. And what was important was that all of these exchanges were based on curiosity, respect, and sincere interest in who we were as individuals. We can also plant seeds and train roots within our faith communities, but we also need to make time to do that outside of our communities as well. I believe one of the best ways we can preserve freedom of religion is by trying to faithfully fulfill the stewardships and responsibilities we have within our faith communities, whether that's teaching Sunday school or leading a gospel choir or organizing holy day activities. That's a way to build living bridges within your community, helping others exercise and grow their belief and fostering your own in the process. But in theory, one of the major benefits of religious freedom is that it adds value to the wider community. It facilitates the outreach of faithful individuals and faith organizations to serve and better their communities. And studies bear out the benefits of religious freedom for communities. These benefits, bullet pointed here, are some from a colleague's article she recently wrote, and they're based on lots of studies. I won't take the time to read all of those listed there, but they undoubtedly lead to greater community peace and well-being. So a word of caution: if we as individuals or a faith community are too insular and self-serving, those not of our faith or of any faith at all will not buy the fact that freedom of religion brings any value to the social table. And that is especially true in our society, where a greater percentage of our population than ever identifies their belief system as unaffiliated, non-religious, or secular. Quoting President Dallin H. Oaks again, he has stated that appreciation and support for freedom of religion depends on the value the public attaches to the positive effects of the practices and teachings in churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places of worship. In short, if we don't add value to society with the freedoms we're given, those freedoms won't be valued or upheld by others. Echoing President Oaks's counsel in our church's last general conference, I suggest that if you don't have time to serve outside of your immediate faith group, consider donating the funds that you can to faith-based or other service entities that you believe in. Conversely, if you don't have the means, then prioritize volunteering your time. You can also help build living bridges by attending, volunteering, and serving at interfaith events like this one. And when you do, I would encourage you to not just interact with your friends of your faith, but really make an effort to make new acquaintances and friends. Doing so, again, helps us get out of those echo chambers and those silos that we live in, even post-COVID. I sat next to a woman at the hair salon the other day. For nearly an hour, she talked to her stylist about the things happening in our country that she perceived as incredibly frightening, and she kept repeating, "It's so scary, it's so scary, it's so scary." And certainly there are very many concerning and worrying trends and events in the world and in our country. But my heart went out to her. I just wanted to reach over and put my hand on hers and reassure her that in my work, I meet people of goodwill from all over the world, of all belief systems, who are working to make the world a freer and better place to live and worship in their own communities and countries. I wanted to take her to Vietnam with me because I knew there that I would meet academics, Buddhist monks, Muslim imams, Christians, Hindus, and government officials who are trying to understand and secure the blessings of freedom of religion or belief for people in that country in very difficult circumstances. And events like this meeting tonight remind us that people of goodwill with similar and fundamental goals and beliefs exist within our communities as well. In the process of building living bridges, remember to seek and use what within the Latter-day Saint faith we would call the Spirit. The book of Galatians in the Bible's New Testament reads, "The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance." If we aren't feeling, witnessing, or using those fruits in our efforts to exercise our religion and build living bridges, we may need to examine why that is. If you're feeling fear or frustration more than faith, you may want to ponder why that is and change your actions or change your mindset or heart in some way. Growing and strengthening living bridges takes time, work, nurturing, and patience. The living bridges of Mobi, India take decades to grow and to sustain, large groups of people. We have to recognize that planting the fig tree seeds and training the aerial roots in our communities may take months, years, and decades as well. Unfortunately, we're humans living in the 21st century, and we're programmed to want really quick and easy answers. In the United States, the divisions between us take the shape of wide concrete driveways rather than jungle canyons, right? And we may, be tempted to take shortcuts in building bridges across those wide concrete expanses. For example, we may try to raise the profile of our religion in our community by using slogans or signs or symbols, which may feel like an easy way to exercise and promote our religious beliefs. But doing so can actually set us apart from others in an unproductive way and fail to join us together in that strong organic mesh so necessary to living bridges. We may be tempted to hold figurative ribbon cutting ceremonies showing off a bridge that looks really good but is actually slipshod in construction and ultimately fails to hold any weight, like that bridge in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In this work of building living bridges, there are no shortcuts. Sustained labor of planting seeds and training the branches requires us to do that really hard, but the satisfying sustained labor of engaging with, creating relationships of trust with, and collaborating with those who believe differently than we do. It requires each of us to live our beliefs in the highest and holiest way in interacting with our neighbors near and far. Elder Lance B. Wickman, an emeritus general authority of our church, said, "When we exercise our religious freedom to serve and lift, to strengthen community ties, and to pour oil on troubled waters, and to make America better, when we use our religious freedom to bring people together in unity and love, we are defending and preserving religious liberty in a most profound way." End quote. I pray that each of us may be strengthened to do so, that we may strengthen each other and strengthen and bring peace to our communities. And I close as we customarily do in our faith, in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Amy, for that inspiring message. We will now transition into the panel discussion portion of our meeting tonight. And I will turn the time over to Alan Euler, the Portland Area Communication Director for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, who will act as the moderator for our discussion and also introduce our distinguished panel members.
Good evening. First of all, you should know that I tried talking my wife into doing this. She is the co-director of communications, and I figured we should pull equal weight. But she reminded me that she was going into surgeries tomorrow, and she pulled that card on me, and so I lost. This evening, we have six distinguished panelists that we're going to have speak on the subject that you've just heard about, each from their own perspective and each from their own experiences that they've had in life as it relates to religious freedom and religious tolerance. I'm going to first introduce, and what I'm going to have you do, Rabbi, is I'm going to have you come join me, because I don't know if yes, would you come join me so we both can see, and you're going to be first up. Oh, I'm going to have you there. Great. So Rabbi Michael Kahana, the senior rabbi, coming. Oh, is it?
I thought the projector was on. I didn't want to block it. Okay.
It is on, so come to this side of me.
No, I'm good.
So they can see. So anyway, Rabbi Kahana joined the congregation of Beth Israel, becoming 18th senior rabbi to serve congregation Beth Israel in Portland, Oregon. Leading synagogues in the Midwest and East Coast, Rabbi Kahana's strive to achieve vibrant and inclusive Jewish communities. He was born in Houston, Texas. He comes from a multi-generation of rabbis, including his late father, Rabbi Moshe Kahana, and his older brother, Rabbi Ronnie Kahana. But before following the family tradition of rabbinic life, Rabbi Kahana began his career as and I didn't know this, in theater, including acting, directing, and theatrical design. Soon, though, he followed his family tradition and called him to be ordained in 1994 becoming the first Reformed rabbi in his family's long history. He served on the Central Conference of American Rabbis Committees on Human Sexuality and chaired its ad hoc committee on physician-assisted suicide count. He's a past president of the Oregon Board of Rabbis. While studying in Jerusalem, he met his wife, Cantor Ida Ray Kahana, who is formerly the senior cantor for the Manhattan Central Synagogue and now serves as a senior cantor at the congregation Beth Israel. They have a son, David, and triplets, and you're going to help me, Sarit, Leona, and Edith. And thank you. Rabbi Khan and I first met at the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, a gathering of faith leaders in a group called the Common Table, where we discussed amongst ourselves how we could join together in developing trust with one another and being able to address the issues that we had that divided us and focus on those things that brought us together. And so with that, I'm going to ask Rabbi Kahana if you would take some time and speak to the thoughts that you had as a result of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alan, and thank you for bringing us all together. This theme of building bridges is something that I think everybody here feels very, very strongly about. We've all worked together on so many different kinds of projects, so many times that we've had this sense of common cause and of breaking bread together that when we were gathering here, we were spending too much time laughing. We keep seeing each other on Zoom. This is the first time we've seen each other in 3 dimensions in several years. We all just wanted to go out to dinner, but we decided we'd stay with you. And we really are honored that we can have this chance to share in this. And Professor, thank you for those that incredible presentation. I'm going to hold on to that image of living bridges for a long time. That is a powerful, powerful metaphor. I really learned something from that and from all of your presentation. And I think it's something that I feel very strongly, and I think all of us here do, this notion that that a bridge has to be living, that it can't be just something you slap up one day and say, look what I did, isn't that nice? And then go back into your little isolated sphere. Look, we've all been isolated for a long time. And that isolation, we all know what that did to us. We know what that did to the children who had to try to learn in isolation. We human beings are not good at isolation. It's not what we do best. We are a very communal species. We get life and we give life by being engaged. And these opportunities are so very important. I had a lot of thoughts as we were going through, and I don't want to do everything. And I know we'll hear from our colleagues, my wonderful colleagues here even more. I want to start though with the Hebrew Bible and the beginning. And if you look at Genesis, the first introduction of the human being, it says in Hebrew that this human being is created b'tselem Elohim, in God's image. What does that mean? I don't think it means that God looks like me, God forbid. It's not a physical representation of God. It is that we, each of us, every human being, has a spark of divinity within us. That's the core. It's not all the externals. And not that the externals are unimportant. They're important. They're part of who we are. We are complex entities. But at our core, we have that spark of divinity. And if we can see that spark in another person, if we can recognize God when we see another person, then we can appreciate all of those other elements as well. We should start from a place of curiosity. How is God reflected in you? You have a life experience, you have a peoplehood experience, you have a whole history that's so different than mine. Tell me about yours. Tell me about you. Who are you? What do you believe? If we start with curiosity, the differences become engaging. They become wonderful. I love to learn about you. It doesn't diminish me. It doesn't take away from what I believe. It only enhances. And if we know anything about the world, I mean, think about the first perception that you had about the world around you. If you have children, if you have grandchildren, you see in their eyes the wonder that they have. The first thing they see is, look how incredible this world is. There's so much diversity. Again, to the Hebrew Psalms, Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai. How great are your works, O God. How diverse are your works, O God. There's so much diversity. And thank God, wouldn't it be terrible if there wasn't? I mean, there was one kind of bird in the world. What a boring world it would be. This diversity of humanity is one of the gifts of God. I think God loves that. God loves to see all the different ways, all the different colors, all the different ideas, all the different languages that we have. And that is something that we should celebrate when we talk about building bridges. I know it's very common when we talk about this interfaith work to concentrate on what unites us. And that's good. And I think we do have to have some commonality. We have to begin, as we heard, with these ideas of respect and appreciation and curiosity. But I actually want to spend time on the differences. I think that the differences are great. We're always afraid that we don't want to talk about where we're different because we're afraid we're going to give offense. But how is it offensive when you ask someone, tell me about you. Tell me about what you believe. Tell me about how you pray. Tell me about your family. There's no offense that's there. It's only beauty. It's only diversity. It's that great appreciation. Marabu ma'asecha Adonai, how wonderful are your works, not just in the birds and in the flowers, but in the human beings, the incredible diversity that we have. I love that this group of people are called together and the work that we have done together on many, many different things. And just the last thought that I want to give with this, why am I engaged in interfaith work? Aside from the fact that these are the greatest people, they're so cool. And some of them really know how to preach, let me tell you. If you're lucky, you're going to get a good preaching here. But the problems, as you said before, the problems of our world are so great. And it is so easy to lose hope. Why? Because we can't fix them all. In our own humility, we're small individuals. We do the best that we can, but we can't fix it all. But together, we can do incredible things. And when you come from a different background, when you come from a different idea, when you see God in somewhat of a different way, you're going to come up with an idea that I never would have thought of. And how wonderful. And I can bounce off of that difference that you brought and your different understanding, and I can bring it with mine, and we together can explore something in a way that we wouldn't have done had we tried to do this on our own. There's so much work that has to be done. How beautiful it is when we can do it together. May we all be a living bridge. Thank you.
Thank you, Ravi. When I first met these great individuals tonight, I shared with them that they each had 5 minutes.
I took up 20, right?
Well, I thought you would be the shortest, so I'm in big trouble. Tyler Connoley, would you come and join? Reverend Connoley is the conference minister for the United Church of Christ in Oregon and Southwest Washington and Southern Idaho. And he and Elder Wright were speaking just before the meeting, and they were both commiserating that they had a great large territory. They had a lot of responsibility, but neither of them had any authority. So you met a friend tonight in Elder Wright. Elder Connoley is a 5th generation clergy, so he really has DNA in his church, the church in his DNA, excuse me. He's also a 5th generation Northwesterner with his father's side. They ancestors lived in Star, Idaho, and later moved to Medford and other parts of Oregon. He grew up in Zambia, where his parents were missionaries, and came to the United Church of Christ in 2004. He spent most of his adult life serving in church, first as a lay minister, then as an ordained minister, including 5 years as a chaplain. A biblical theologian and storyteller, Tyler has a master's degree in Master's of Arts degree in religion and a Master of Divinity from the Earlham School of Religion. His undergraduate degree is in business and economics from Indiana Wesleyan University. In addition to his ministry activities, Tyler is a small business owner with his husband, Chef Robert Connoley. Reverend Connoley is one of the members of the Ecumenical Ministries Common Table, and that's where we met. So, Reverend, would you take your 5+ minutes? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for inviting me. And thank you all for showing up. Thank you for those of you online who showed up. And for all of my friends here on stage, thank you for being part of this. So I am a minister in the United Church of Christ, and I chose the United Church of Christ because it is the United Church. Many people think of us as the most progressive Christian denomination because they know that we were the first to, call on the government to recognize same-sex marriages, or because of other things that we did. But in fact, we are not the most progressive. We are the most inclusive Christian denomination. And we were founded in 1957 on this idea of inclusivity. And here in Portland, I think it's hard to think of the United Church of Christ and conservative churches, but in other parts of the country, we have many very conservative churches in the United Church of Christ. And it's the reason that I am in the United Church of Christ, is because I want to be in a denomination where we try to be together, despite our theological differences. In fact, because of our theological differences, we are better together than we are apart. That is really part of who we are and part of my own DNA. I will also say that this idea of living with diversity is, for me, not theoretical. It is actually practical, and it is also personal. You heard that I'm 5th generation clergy. My parents are Wesleyan missionaries. And I grew up being told by my father, we're evangelicals, we are not fundamentalists. That was a very important distinction for my father, that he is an evangelical and he is not fundamental in the way that he thinks. I grew up and joined the United Church of Christ, and I am a very progressive, out gay Christian. And my sister grew up and became a fundamentalist Baptist. And so in my family, we have the entire spectrum of Protestant Christian faith. And one of the things that we've learned in the United Church of Christ is that trying to be together in religious diversity is very, very hard. And I will say from my own experience in my family that it is very, very hard. And that you have to learn not just to be curious, which I think is really important, but you also have to learn to be able to say, this is what I need, this is what I want, and this is what my bottom line is. So when I met and married my husband, my sister decided that she would not be in the same room with him, that for her, she could not be in the same room with him. And so the first thing that we did was that we shouted at each other for a couple hours. I shouted at her about how she was not a real Christian, and if she was a real Christian, she would welcome everyone the way Jesus did. And she shouted at me that she would not stand by and watch me go to hell. And that so she couldn't abide by my sin and be in the same room with my husband. And we shouted at each other. And then eventually we got to a place where we were able to talk to each other and say, well, what is it that's really important? And what was important to both of us was that we maintain a relationship. It wasn't important to us that we be in that relationship in exactly all the ways that we thought we needed to be. And so what we learned was that my sister would not be in the same room with my husband, and I would not come to family gatherings without my husband. So we did not have family gatherings together, but we wanted to be in relationship with each other. And so what we agreed to was that we would come together for meals at my mother's house, just her, and eventually her kids, and just me. And we could be in relationship in that place. And that was the beginning of a relationship for us. It was hard. And being in relationships with people that you disagree with fundamentally is hard. But if we can go to what is the core, I want to remain in relationship with you. What is the core of what's important to me? What are the things that I won't let go of, like my husband, that she won't let go of, like her beliefs about my husband? And how can we learn to be together? That, for me, is what real religious diversity is about. It's about going to those really hard places and figuring out how can we continue to be in relationship in the midst of those really hard places.
Thank you very much, Reverend Connoley. Appreciate it. Jan, would you join us? There was no order, so they're all surprised as to when it's their turn. Jan Elfers has had a long, distinguished career at Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, starting in 2003. She served as the Director of Membership, forging relationships with individuals and various communities of faith. She earned her master's degree in applied theology at Marylhurst University. And in 2015, she became the interim executive director of the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon and later became the permanent president. When Jan Elfers took over the reins of EMO, which is the Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon, there was a lot of challenges, but with her leadership, EMO established its finances, stabilized the refugee and immigrant resettlement program, and strengthened partnerships with service providers. Her leadership style is has brought an empathetic and listening approach to Emo's work. And thanks to her leadership, Emo is a very positive place, poised for poised to flourish as never before in the years ahead. And in fact, I think, if I'm not wrong, Emo is now the largest ecumenical ministry organization in the United States. Is that correct? So racial justice, quite frankly, has long been Jan's passion. And she's been intentional in learning about this movement. And she's taken a deep dive into questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Quite frankly, I credit Jan's leadership for the formation and success of the Common Table, of which we are all members of. She's married to Mike, and she has 2 children. Jan, would you share your thoughts? And I think I can read that. Just need to be lower.
This is fine. Good evening, friends. It's good to be with you this evening. I'm retired, and but when Alan called me and told me the topic of tonight's service, I couldn't say no. This is such a passion for me, and I believe, we all are called in some way by God to do something. We have a passion and a brilliance for something. And for some reason, this has been the calling of my life, to build bridges and to seek to understand. And I believe that is something that I will do for the rest of my life. So thank you for the invitation. I'll start with first of all, thank you, Tyler, for your vulnerability. I think that vulnerability and open-heartedness to one another is a key to building bridges, to be human together, to share our whole selves with one another. I'll tell a quick story about myself. This was several years ago. My daughter lived in San Francisco, and she was having a really hard time in her life. And the latest complication was she'd broken her ankle. She lived 3 floors up in an apartment, had a dog and a cat, and she called me in tears and said, "Mom, I need your help. Could you please come down and help me? I'm having surgery." And I was in the midst of being the public policy director at EMO, and it was legislative session. So it wasn't the best time for me to be leaving, but I rushed down to San Francisco and had been there several days, and it was a particularly hectic day. And I was trying to get online at a coffee shop, and I forgot my computer. So I rushed back. I was late to my meeting, and I parked. There's no parking in San Francisco, by the way. There's no place to park. I parked in a driveway and ran upstairs to get I thought, it's going to take me 30 seconds. I ran upstairs, and as I get to the top of the stairs, I hear this horn blaring down at the bottom of the stairs. So I go, get my computer, and I come down, and this guy gets out of his car and just screams at me, "Don't you ever take this parking spot again. This is my parking spot." And I lost it. I totally lost it. I looked at him and I said, "Where is your humanity?" I can't even believe I said that. I said, "My daughter is in crisis. I am trying to help her. I just blah on him. Do you have children? Have they ever been in crisis? Do you understand?" And we weren't even looking at each other. We were just screaming at each other. And he stopped, and he looked up at me, and he looked in my eyes, and our eyes met, and he said, "As a matter of fact, I have 4 children, and my son died last week." And suddenly, everything changed between us. We were just 2 people in pain. And we just looked at each other, and I said, "I am so, so sorry for your loss." And he said, "I'm sorry too." And we walked away, and we'll never see each other again. But it was such a lesson to me about what is happening in our world when we treat one another as objects and we label, and you don't have a name and you don't have a history. You are something, and I don't like the thing you are. We are God's children. We are precious in God's eyes. We are created by God to be in relationship with one another. And this is what we have to give to the world. The precious nugget we have to give to the world is this good news that we have as people of faith. We need to offer this to the world that so desperately needs it. Whatever faith tradition we are, and I will say what brought me to this work was one of the earliest people I met was Wajdi Saeed at the Muslim Educational Trust. I was so curious after 9/11 about what is Islam, who are my Muslim brothers and sisters. I didn't know any of them. And so Wajdi encouraged me to, with some women from the Muslim Educational Trust and some women I had met through my work in membership at EMO, to start an organization or a group called Between Women. And what we did with Between Women was we had 5 Christian, 5 Jewish, and 5 Muslim women. And we met for 5 years, and exactly what we did was begin to peel away the labels and begin to know one another intimately as friends. And we were afraid, and we were scared to ask questions that might be offensive. And over the course of time, that's exactly where we went. We're different. What do you think about this? And because we loved each other, you were my friend. You were, someone that I respected. And so we weren't afraid to go there and to learn about what we loved. And we realized how much we did have in common and the differences we had. And I can just say through that open-heartedness and curiosity that we had for one another, we forged lifelong friendships that I continue to treasure to this day. And so I'm sure I'm over my time, but I just want to encourage all of you that we have something so valuable to offer to this world, because we know we are created by God to be in relationship with God and with one another. Let's don't squander that precious gift we have. The world so desperately needs it. And each one of us can be that one little light that brings change to really difficult times. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Jan. Reverend Pastor Hennessy, would you come? I learned long ago, in 2019, that you never follow Pastor Hennessy in a talk. And Pastor Hennessy has served as the senior pastor of the Vancouver Avenue First Baptist Church since 2005. He's just all around polished in everything that he does. He's traveled the world on business. He's been involved in so many committees and so many organizations. He has a bachelor's degree and a master's of divinity and from Golden Gate Theological Seminary in Mill Valley, doctorate candidate at George Fox Seminary, and he's a recipient of the honorary doctoral degree from the Christian Theological Seminary in Houston, Texas. He has a working relationship with each of the governors, the mayors of Portland, the presidents of the Metro Council, the Multnomah County chairs, and legislative leaders in Washington, D.C. and in Salem since he arrived in Oregon in 1988. He's married to Elder Tawana Hennessy, who gave the opening prayer. They have 2 sons, 2 daughters, 9 grandchildren, and several godchildren. As a matter of fact, I don't think you mind me saying that your godmother was the late Miss Coretta Scott King, the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King. And the pulpit that he used to preach Sunday sermons was the one and only place in Oregon where Martin Luther King came and preached. And he gave me the privilege one day of bearing my testimony unexpectedly. And I appreciate that opportunity because it, again, gave me a sense of how blessed we are of having people of good and good heart and good mind. So, Pastor Hennessy, would you share your thoughts?
Thank you, my brother. Good evening, everybody. It's really good to see you. Thank you, Brother Allen. Thank you to to Elder Wright. Thank you, Professor Andrus, who really challenged us tonight. I'm also grateful to be here with not only my wife, Elder Hennessy, also Minister Hobson, and also our granddaughter that we're raising, little Ashton. We are grateful to have her with us. Could you do me a favor? Could everybody just stand real quick? Just stand really quick, because you've been sitting for just a little while, and I know this is a good time for you to want to go to sleep. So I thought it might be good if you stand and stretch. You can't leave because we still have other speakers, but you certainly can be seated now. And just remember, if you're ever speaking and want a standing ovation, that's the one way to get it. I am as humbled and honored as the speakers before me to have the opportunity for us to do work together in our communities to make it better, but at the same time to be challenged by the great work Professor Andrus tonight as we think about the theme of living bridges. My friends, as I think about this, I come to it only, and by the way, I'm rushing because I know I've only got 5 minutes, and I'm trying to teach Wajdi something. Because if you tell Wajdi you've got 5 minutes, I got news for you. 20 minutes later, he's still talking. So I'm going to try to do my part. I'm grateful for each of my colleagues here. I love each one of them, and we've done a lot of great work together. My friends, I come with this context. I think about talking about living bridges, but recognizing that I live in a state that in 1844 said that if you find somebody black in it, shoot them or get rid of them in whatever way. That's the truth. That we live in a world that, quite frankly, we were considered only 3/4 of a person. And the reality is that even today, there are people who have a hard time seeing people who look like me walking around in their neighborhood because it caused them to be frightened, or to deal with police officers who I, by the way, work with on a daily basis, but I still can't figure out why it is for a white person who's shot at, they seem to be able to walk away. But for a black person who's shot at, they may literally not only die, but have anywhere from 20 to 50 rounds in their body because of the fear that people have of people who look like me. I come to this moment not somber, I come in reality that this is what we live with. People who live in our neighborhoods are worried about their house values going down because of a black person moving next door. Or for children who are growing up in a school and they want to have a black friend or a brown friend, and their parents saying, I don't think you can invite them to come to the house for dinner. Or for the experiences that I've had where I've seen people who don't want to rent to us because of the color of our skin. Or a person who can work on a budget committee and have a fine time with me being the leader of it, but tells us in the budget meeting that his brother adopted 5 black children, and he told his brother, don't bring them to the house for dinner because I don't want to see them sitting at our table. My friends, this is reality. And yet, when George Floyd was killed, Many people came to me and said, I don't know what to do. A white pastor said to me, can you help us? Can you tell me what book I can read? And I said, my brother, and to his colleague, my sister, don't read a book. Come walk with me. Come walk with your neighbor. Come walk with the person that does not look like you. When we talk about building living bridges, we must understand that one of the roots of building the bridge is not being a civil engineer, but being a human engineer that says with intentionality, however it is, I'm going to figure out a way to walk with you. I'm going to figure out a way to get beyond the prejudices that I have and what my parents have said and what my grandparents have said, and I'm going to figure out how to walk with you, how to learn from you. Please understand that even in my tradition, as not only a cultural Black person, but also a religious one, that I too have had those moments where I was standing in a rib shack. I was going there to eat ribs and I couldn't believe it, but in a minute or two, there were white people showing up. Now y'all need to understand something. When I grew up, we ate ribs, but white people certainly didn't eat ribs because that was poor people's food. Because you see, where we grew up believing that all white people were rich. And we had to figure out the fact that that's not the case. So let me just say to you, in the moments that are mine, that we have to be intentional about reaching one another. That no matter what our experiences have been, we don't have the right to be afraid of one another. We have a responsibility to say, I want to walk through my fear and even tell you about the fact that I have been fearful to sit down and have this conversation, but have it anyway. Do I have a witness here today? It's important for us to be intentional about it and listen as we do to Dr. Andrus, who reminds us that on the one hand, we must be intentional about building the bridge, or the bridge will never be built. Why is it that we do the work we do? Why is it that I use Isaiah's example that, Lord, if you need somebody, send me? Is because I don't want my grandchildren or great-grandchildren having to fight the same fights that I've had to fight, and that those who've had to fight before me. You and I should be in a trajectory that says it's time for this division, this hate, this determination not to work together, not to sit together, not to walk together, not to understand one another. It needs to be over. It is time for us to remember that we need to work together, be intentional about it. Secondly, we must be open to consider what the person who we don't know and don't understand, who they are, what they are, and why they are. And when we begin to do that and answer those questions, what we begin to realize is that sometimes the enemy is not me, the enemy has been us. The reality is that for every one of us, we've got reasons why we feel and do and fear the things we fear. But the reality is we will never get better as long as we stay on the side of fear. I come to tell you that all my life I've been determined to literally cause people to be disarmed. Because when you see a big 200-pound Black man coming in your way, you might get a little bit concerned. But the truth is, I believe that I need to smile at you. I need to let you know that no matter what you think of me, your love for me doesn't have a thing to do with my love for you. Because I'm going to love you anyhow. Come on now. The other thing is I'm committed to stand, and we must be committed to stand, to build these bridges, which, by the way, Dr. Andrus gives us this reality of bridges that failed. That is America's problem. That is America's problem. We've got too many human bridges that get built and they fall because people are not as committed. And the reality is we must be. So I want you to remember that Dr. King reminds us that we are all here together, that your destiny and my destiny are inextricably bound. And then finally, I want to end, because I'm past my time, although I would have reset that clock, is to say this. I'm reminded that as we hear these statements today from all of us up here, everyone asked the main question that the white pastor asked me: what can I do? The reality is, each one of us can do. Don't forget, it was Rosa Parks who said, I am not giving up my seat. Do I have a witness here? Right? It was Rosa Parks. It wasn't a bunch of people. It was Rosa Parks that did it, and many followed. And we had the blessing, members of the Jewish Federation, the Black community, we went on a civil rights tour together in Atlanta, in Birmingham, in Montgomery, and Selma in April of this year, because why? We intended to figure out how we can work together. And tomorrow night and each Monday in November, we're going to do that conversation together. So while we're here tonight, I just want to beg you to say that each person here has a responsibility and an opportunity to do whatever it is you want to do to help us build the human bridge to somebody else. Robert Fulgham said it better than I could. He said that there was a Sunday school teacher who was about to teach Sunday school for the first time, and there were nothing but 3- and 4-year-olds in the classroom. And somebody said, what are you going to do when the kids get bored? He said, well, it's easy. We're going to play a game of Knights and Dragons. He said, and I'm going to have every one of them decide who they are. They are a knight or a dragon. At that point, they have to go to this corner and that corner. If you're knights over here and dragons are over here, and they must go to the corner. And when I say start, they must end up engaging in friendly warfare. So that time came, they got bored. He told them what they needed to do. They went to this corner if you're a knight, in this corner if you're a dragon. And he was happy with himself until he felt a tug at his pant leg. And a little girl looked up at him and said, where do the mermaids go? He said, this isn't a game of mermaids. This is a game of knights and dragons, and you have to decide who you are. And when you do that, then you will get with the group and y'all will get into some warfare. She said, grinning, I know the rules of the game. I'm not a knight and I'm not a dragon. I'm a mermaid. Where do the mermaids go? My friends, I say that to say that everyone in this room does not have to be a knight. You do not have to be a dragon. It's time for the mermaids to start standing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reverend. You now understand what I said at the beginning. Brother Wajdi, would you join us?
I just want to start before we start. Look at this. 11 minutes and 50 seconds, you know?
This is a great group, and I love working with them. I'm going to share with you, Wajdi is such a great individual. He has, ever since he arrived in the United States from Yemen in 1988, he has made it his mission to try to build bridges of understanding. He is the president of the Muslim Education Trust in Tigard, Oregon, and he has worked with that group. They have a K-8, K-12 school that they bring folks in. He works with immigrants, refugees, and I've had the great honor and privilege of working with him on various committees and in various boards of directors. He was one of the founders of the Interfaith Council of Greater Portland, and that was the group that came together after the 9/11 situation. And he was a founder of the Arab Jewish Muslim Dialogue, the Institute of Christian Muslim Understanding. He also helped form the Islamic Social Services of State of Oregon and the Arab and Muslim Police Advisory Board. He was probably the strong voice in advocating for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to gain membership in the Interfaith Council of Portland, and stood up where others didn't. I met Wajdi in 2012 while serving as a stake president, local leader of our church. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, who was a member of the Quorum of 12 Apostles and senior leadership in our church, and he was also the former president of Brigham Young University, met with Wajdi and promised that he would deliver him a series of books that had been translated by BYU from ancient Arabic writings. And Elder Holland's instructions were for me to establish relationship, grow that relationship with Wajdi. He has been a great friend and ally ever since. Wajdi, you take some time and share your thoughts. I know you got the clock running and you'll do well. Let's see if you can beat 11 minutes.
The first prize goes to Pastor Hennessy, and then second is Rabbi Kahana, the third is Jan Alford, and then Reverend Tyler. My beloved sisters and brothers, it's really an honor for us to be over here. When I come to the LDS Church, I remember my dear late brother Maurice Teller. He was the first ambassador of the LDS Church to introduce us, to what it means to be a Mormon or to be an LDS. Before I go to my presentation, I want to introduce my colleague, Dr. Juwaria Said. Juwaria, she's a PhD in genetics from Johns Hopkins, and she is the director of our STEM program, First of all, I would like to thank, my beloved brother Alan and my beloved sister Jerry for this important invitation. It's something that we looking forward, to engage in public, as the rabbi says, in a 3D way. I want to thank Anne that we met over Zoom and for her beautiful introduction, and Elder Wright as well, for your leadership and positive leadership. I want to thank my beloved sister Tawana. Where is she? She's gone, huh? Okay. For her beautiful prayers, and Elder Hobson too as well for coming. I want to thank the elders in this room, for taking, time from their time. When I see the elders, I see wisdom. And I want to thank also the young people here in this room, because it's Sunday night and here they are. There is hope always, hope that we're gonna win this divisive world. Professor Andrus, thank you very much for your presentation. And there are many challenges today that we face as human beings. These challenges are physical and artificial boundaries that we have created humans. 100+ years ago, the world was one world, You could travel from Yemen, where I came from, carrying coffee and frankincense and raisins and many other goods, and go all the way to China without visa. You ride your camel, you ride your horse, and then you bring goods, from this vast world in East and West Asia, and you go to North Africa and East Africa, and then the southern part of the European continent. This is humanity that it used to be, and unfortunately, colonial divided us. Colonial brought our African sisters and brothers, they brought scholars, they brought doctors, they brought many people, to the continent as slaves. Unfortunately, humanity been disrupted many times by our own work. Religious persecution. Today we hear about religious persecution against Muslims in India and also in China and many other places. Divisive messages, and you see it in the TV ads. Democrat condemning Democrat, Republicans condemning Democrat, and vice versa. Hypocrisy and double standard in our churches, in our synagogues, in our mosques, in our wards, and many other. There are financial difficulties as well. My beloved sisters and brothers, my first introduction of hypocrisy and double standard, Brother Allen has said it. When I saw Maurice Taylor, representing the LDS, and Angie Duroshi representing the Scientology faith. Many of our dear sisters and brothers, good people, because of ignorance, they fought the presence of these two individuals. One is a Mormon and the other one is a Scientologist. If it wasn't my dear beloved brother, he was conference minister Hector Lopez supporting myself. It takes a strong woman and a strong man, an honest woman and an honest man to stand for the truth. Hector, he said, I support Brother Wajdi. He stood against the most strongest lady. She was the chancellor of the Catholic Church, that they don't do multi-faith and they don't do beyond the Abrahamic traditions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And there was another United Methodist, a good brother, very good man. He stood up against this membership because he said that Mormons and Scientologists are cults. So I told him, I disagree with that, and I disagree strongly. We are here, as the rabbi says earlier, to speak where we are divided, why we are in disagreement. We didn't come here, to pamper each other and to kiss up for each other. We came here to discuss issues that divide us. There are many manifestations of hate that this country, our beloved country, has faced. The slavery, the indigenous people, the American indigenous people been, endangered, their lives. Many Africans been disrupted from their beautiful life in Africa. The challenges against the Japanese American, the Chinese American, and many, and as well as the LDS members. Yes, we might disagree in faith, we might disagree in creed, but nobody has the right, to fight against any person or persecute any person. My beloved sisters and brothers, somebody today might leave and he said, what are the solutions? The professor spoke very eloquently. I disagreed with what she said, with some. But the solutions is to compromise where we can compromise today. That's what my mother taught me. I grew up with 9 sisters. She used to remind me all the time, in front of every great man, there are 9 sisters in front of him. I learned how to behave, I learned how to accept, and I learned how to love and care. I was the best dishwasher in the family, and I still do the dishes until now. Acceptance is very important. Compromise is very important, and acceptance is very important. We shouldn't rush to judge each other. We have to listen to one another. My brother, Reverend Taylor, is a gay. For me as a Muslim, I don't condemn the lifestyle of gays. This is how I am. But I love him dearly and I respect him. One of my best beloved sister is Judith, young woman, not young man, young woman. She was a gay, she was a lesbian. I didn't judge her, but we loved one another, we cared for each other. We invited one another. I look forward for every Tuesday, the Beloved Community Coalition that myself and Reverend Dr. Hector Lopez created. We still meet every Tuesday. I love my dear sister Judith. She knows that I love her and I care about her and I accept her the way she is. Sexuality is a private issue within our faith. The people of Lot is an example. Homosexuality is not a new issue. But who am I, to judge? Let God be the judge. Let God be the one that's most merciful, the most compassionate. My beloved sisters and brothers, it's very important for us today to examine our faith, the spiritual discourse that each one of us, irrespective of our sectarian or denominations or whatever ism we belong to, dealing with people of other faith and communities is predicated on the authentic understanding of our faith. What is our faith says about building bridges and acceptance? Attitudes generated by such understanding, how I react, about this understanding. our willingness to abide by such teachings, that when I see somebody that is different than me in the church, in the synagogue, in the mosque, in any places of worship, I reach out to them every Friday. 90% of the people that come in the place that I was honored to be one of the co-founders, I don't know them, but I'll make sure that I extend my hand to the left and to the right, and I'll go make sure to make them feel comfortable. It is very important that, we have to have the willingness to abide by such beloved community that God has created us as one, and God is the ultimate judge. God the Almighty in the Quran says, we have made you from male and females and made you into nations and tribes to get to know each other, We have to get to know each other. We're not here in a competitive, because success comes through collaboration. We need to re-examine our faith. We need to rethink our faith. We need to reclaim our faith. The Quran says that the multiple understanding of each other, the pluralism, the different ethnicities, and the religious diversity is a divine plan. If God wants us to be one, He will say, be, and it is. Rather than God, He created us because He created the heavens and earth, and He created us with different tongues and different colors of skin. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِلْعَالَمِينَ. And surely these are the signs to those that ponder and reflect in the creation of God. وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَآمَنَ مَنْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كُلُّهُمْ جَمِيعًا. If God intended that all of us to have one faith, we would have that faith. أَفَأَنْتَ تَكْرَهُ النَّاسَ حَتَّى يَكُونُوا مُؤْمِنِينَ. Who are you, O Muhammad, to force people to understand one faith? The acceptance of our Jewish sisters and brothers has been a testimony in our Islamic civilizations. 900 years of Islamic civilization was a testimony. A great scholar of a Jewish scholarship, Dr. Wassenstein, David Wassenstein, write his name. He's in Vanderbilt. He said if it wasn't Islam, Judaism wouldn't have survived Christian Europe. And you know about the Holocaust. What a miserable testimony. What a miserable testimony when the church stayed quiet about it. And some of them provocated, and some of them abused my beloved sisters and brothers of a Jewish background. We lived and coexist as Muslims, as Christian and Jews. For me, where I came from Yemen, my mother remembered the high holidays when she took care of our Jewish sisters and brothers in the neighbors, and vice versa, the Jewish Yemenis took care of my young sisters and brothers in the Muslim high holidays. Can we claim back this love and this respect and this acceptance? Yes, we can. When we teach our kids to accept, each other, and they accept people that are different than others. May God bless us, and may God let us overcome these challenges that we face. And believe it or not, I buried Pastor Hennessy.
We would like to thank everyone who's participated and played a role in making tonight possible. We'd like to thank Ryan Gates, who has assisted us with all of our technology, and his helpers as well. I know there were many behind the scenes helping us with that. We're streaming this live on Zoom. I'm told we have somewhere between 200 and 300 people viewing this on Zoom. So we appreciate the help with the technology in making this possible tonight. Of course, we'd also like to thank all those who participated and inspired us with their messages. We'd also like to thank the Lake Oswego stake of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for being our hosts tonight. In closing, we will have Elder Wright give us some short remarks, followed by a prayer by Reverend Linda Jaramillo.
Thank you to each one of you for being here with us this evening. Thank you. It brings deep joy to be sitting here with people of diverse beliefs, but still who have this fundamental understanding of human dignity. I'm so grateful for the relationships that you have developed with Alan, and that he is able to call on friends like you to bring us together in a situation like this, where we're able to show that there is such goodness in humanity, and demonstrating the importance of religious freedom. Two words have been going through my mind as I've been sitting here tonight, and one is need and one is service. And on September 8th, 2020, in Southern Oregon, the wind shifted. And I know that happened along a lot of this side of the Cascade Mountains, all up and down the state of Oregon. And in our case, it meant that a fire, the Alameda fire, was started in northern Ashland and began to rip through the communities of Phoenix and Talent on its way into Medford. That night, as I was driving home from work, I crossed I-5 and I looked south towards Ashland and saw what was developing in the valley, and saw smoke, and contacted the Red Cross, and we started setting up a shelter along with the Jackson County Expo shelter that was set up. That night, I saw tremendous need in our valley. What I loved about what I observed that night in the shelter that I was in, and then in the shelter that other people that I know of that were involved in the Jackson County Expo Center, nobody was asking what faith anybody belonged to as they came to that situation that night with a need. Everybody who was serving that night that I saw, of all different capacities, all different religions, and some with people with no religion, but still continue to be convinced of the basic nature of human dignity. Nobody was asked about their sexuality. Nobody was asked about race or anything else. Their color, that did not matter in this tremendous moment of need. In a lot of ways, there was chaos in our valley that evening as people were trying to find a way to go and not knowing what would happen. I believe everybody of faith that night was praying that God would calm the winds. And thankfully, with the work of wonderful first responders and other people, that fire was put out that evening. The next day, as actually, I wasn't able to go the next day, but I think about 2 days after that, I was able to go and see the damage that fire caused. I was amazed that only 2 people lost their lives. I was convinced that it would be a lot more than that. Why? There was a need that night, and I know that anybody sitting on this stand, and I believe that anybody sitting here in this group or that is on this call tonight, this Zoom call, when you are presented with a need, you serve. We don't ask those questions. We don't care. We just simply want to reach out and help. And that is where I see the best in humanity. I don't plead for fires like that all the time so that we can see the best in humanity all the time, of course. But at the same time, when those needs arise, it just seems like the best in humanity came out, which I saw that night in Medford, Oregon, and over the next few days as we continue to minister to the needs of each other. So when you see needs, whether those are emotional needs in your own life, the emotional needs of someone else, serve. Be a servant. In the tradition of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we as a people are extremely grateful to the people of Quincy, Illinois, who, when we were being persecuted and chased from the state of Missouri in the winter of 1838 and 1839, kind people on the banks of the Mississippi River in Quincy, Illinois saw a need and served us. We are very grateful for that. To the rest of us who live in the world today, when we see anybody being chased towards us with a need, Don't stop and ask about any of those questions that we just talked about before. What race are you? What nationality? What religious tradition are you from? What is your sexuality? Serve. In that way, Jesus Christ said, I did not come to be ministered to, but to minister, to serve. Our article of faith says that we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience and allow other men the same privilege. And tonight we have seen a demonstration of that in the friends that we have here with us. I'll end with this. If you want religious freedom for yourself, claim it for other people. If I want other people, thank you, Wajdi. I got this issue with my oily skin at night, and it mixes with my tears, and man, it creates havoc on my eyes. But if you want religion for yourself, claim it for other people. If they want religious freedom for themselves, they best claim it for other people. And in that way, we will continue to maintain religious freedom in the United States of America. I leave that with you with a plea that I have every morning, just about every morning. I can't claim every morning. But I plead with God for the gift of charity, for the gift to look and love at every one of his sons and daughters that I see every day and to feel genuine love for them. And that is what I believe we have felt tonight. That is what these people clearly feel for each other, despite differences that they have. They still love each other. They believe in the dignity of everyone. And may God bless us each with that wonderful gift of charity and love for each other. It's been wonderful to be with you tonight, and thank you again for being with us. We have loved having you with us.
Before I pray, I want to just say that sometimes there's a better word in Spanish than it is in English. And the word I want to share is the word encuentro. It's stronger than encounter. And the encuentro that we've had, and the encuentro is that when we have these experiences with one another, we cannot feel any space between us. Where I begin, you end. Where you begin, I end. So we're together in all of this. And in that, I would like to invite all who are able and willing to stand as we might glorify God. And to all on Zoom, what a wonder for you to be with us in this encuentro. Let us pray. Glorioso y poderoso Dios de muchos nombres, aquí estamos para ofrecer las gracias. Glorious and powerful God of so many names, we offer you our thanksgiving. We come to you in gratitude for this gathering of hearts and souls and voices, demonstrating our love and our courage and our connection with one another. We especially thank you, O God, for our siblings, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in this space who generously hosted us in this amazing place of building bridges between us and among us. May our journey forward be filled with more spaces and places for communities and congregations to listen to our joy, our pain, our dreams, especially our hopes, as they come alive through our story. May the strength of your presence continue as we return to our homes and our communities on this night, in this day and in the days ahead and the weeks ahead. And now we ask you, O God, for your grace to guide our steps as we seek to transform hostility into hospitality, as we seek to transform resentment into respect, as we seek to transform lamentation into liberation, and as we seek to transform those borders that separate us and make bridges rather than walls. as we seek to transform our woundedness into sacredness. And in the power and the holiness of the many ways we call your name, Dios Santo, en todos de tus nombres, glorioso y gloriosa Dios, te damos las gracias. Amén.
Amen.
Coffee, lunch,
Yeah.
happy hour, whatever.
Whatever.
Or all of it.
Y'all can't leave till we have a picture.
I wish I did.
I'll grab one.